Bungalow Bill here, and welcome back to From the Depths. I've spent way too much time building the submarine over the past 2 weeks or so. It's really meant to be a practical demonstration of switching from vertical lenses to melee lenses. The way that it does that is a little bit different from what I demonstrated with the spin blocks. It just uses, let me switch to smaller blocks, it doesn't cover so much. It uses two separators that move this attachment point up and down 1 meter. So this little 2x3 cluster of particle cannon bits gets reattached from the vertical lens to the melee lens and vice versa via these tubes that come in from the side. This does take up still a fair bit of space because nothing can touch these anywhere around here. So a very large slice of this front is occupied from that, and that really reduces the amount of armor that I can put here. Now, because pack lenses are just kind of weak, especially the one block melee pack lenses, it really doesn't reduce the survivability of this that much. Putting melee pack lenses on a moderately sized vehicle is just such a massive weak point that I kind of doubt it's viable. So there's probably a scale issue here, which is really hindering the viability of this craft. Maybe if I made it considerably smaller at the 20 to 30,000 price point, it might be more effective. This one, not so much. I did think at some point that I could try to do something smart, because these have no attachment point. Let me demonstrate that. On these two sides to let me put things closer, but separator blocks don't care about that. They'll register this as being attached to this piece of heavy armor even when it's not, and the front of my craft will fall off. So wound up having about twice as much dead space as I thought I'd have to, which definite weakness. Another thing, I made this a submarine thinking, okay, well, packs aren't affected by water. Water is a good defense against a lot of things. Well, it takes a lot of water to be a good defense. I really already knew this. Ramming vehicle, you get close, the water's not a good defense anymore. At a kilometer, 1.5 kilometers, water, fantastic defense. If this thing stayed its distance against a lot of enemies, it would actually be more effective than trying to ram them. But ramming things is still fun, so we're still going to try to do it. Another thing is, this has a propeller right on the front. You know, this has so much more health than this lens that, okay, it's not a huge deal really, but it is kind of a big weakness. At the same time, it lets the front be way flatter rather than having to have this big sloping point, which would be just a nightmare in terms of ram coverage. That kind of thing, wasted space. Just able to get this way flatter, way more efficient nose by doing a pole configuration. Instead, we still do have 3 large propellers on the back, this one, and then there's 2 sitting here in a very tight configuration. Gets this thing up to a max speed of 45 meters per second, fast for submarine, still kind of slow. Hinders the number of vehicles that this thing can actually ram significantly. If this was a water skimmer or some type of air vehicle, way faster, could ram more enemies. This also only points at the enemy. It doesn't do any fancy PN guidance, so it winds up in tail chases a lot. The reason it does that, these things only have 10 degrees to the left and the right that they can shoot at. So if it tries to lead an enemy, it might not be able to shoot these cannons at it. That would be a huge disadvantage. As far as firepower, about 130 when it's using these longer range lenses, about 350 if it's using the melee lenses. Let's start by spawning something that it might actually beat. Plunder, around the same cost as it. Lag spike when the plunder spawns. There's another lag spike when this thing switches lenses, which it didn't have to do here. Not a great hit. We do have a lot of sonar, we have radar buoys, we have a wireless snooper, so we can see the enemy target. It doesn't mean that we're going to hit it in a good place. Those are our wireless buoys. I was using harpoon cables earlier, but for some reason they were getting dragged behind us, even though they always used to just go straight up as long as you don't have fins, so I have no idea what's causing that. Good hit there. We can go shoot all the way through some fairly large craft. Come up to hit it. These rams don't do a lot of damage. They're mostly standoffs so that we don't touch the enemy vehicle more than we have to. And pretty quickly melt all the way through, get it to low health. So, weak vehicles we can beat. Also, refill energy. Okay, let's spawn something a little bit more challenging, maybe. What's a good choice? Maybe Iron Maiden's a choice. It might be the one that I use. I feel like I had something else that I wanted to spawn in instead. We'll do the Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden can actually hurt us, so let's watch from our perspective instead this time. This may not be as successful. Like, this is probably only a medium difficulty vehicle. I was really aiming for higher than that, but, you know, things happen. We do have fairly good offensive firepower. We drink materials like crazy now that I'm taking off my material replenishment. There's a reason this thing holds so many materials. I'm going to turn that back on. It depresses me a little bit to see it go down. So, we have okay resilience to HE. Once we get behind something like the Iron Maiden, it's going to have difficulty shooting at us in a reasonable manner, especially once we take off its torpedo tubes. We do have torpedo defenses, but they don't work in melee range. The top of our vehicle, or really anything around these corners, is a severe weak point for accidentally touching enemies. The low update rate of the melee pack locations makes it very difficult to slice all the way through an enemy vehicle. I should potentially have them move slower, just so that they don't have places that they miss. You can see there's some places they just don't touch, like this wooden deck is between two areas that it tends to update frequently. And okay, so we took some damage that time, 2%. Lost a few important things there, actually almost became pretty bad. That's probably due to touching the enemy more than anything else. But we can fight pound for pound with that type of enemy. Once they start getting more difficult, well, this is going to be a problem for us. We can't really beat the torpedoes on the Braveheart. It'll show our weakness a little bit, but the guns are a problem too. The Rhea and our armor-piercing guns just destroy the front of this craft once we get within about 500 meters. We're already losing some blocks. It's not so bad. Okay, that one was bad, though. Yeah, we can't afford that. That's just death for us, basically. We'll try to engage here, but yeah, we only have one working particle cannon at this point. Our melee damage is just not great in this scenario. Our EMP protection, I need to put more surge protectors in. We just have a few at the front. Really hurt. So, you know, we're doing a little bit of damage here, but we're AI dead too, so... Alright, that's not going to go too well. We wouldn't have been AI dead if I put in a few more surge protectors, but rather than just having a few at the front. But my point really still stands there. Also, depending on how we switch these blocks when we've taken damage, sometimes bad things happen. Let's spawn in an enemy and see if they reattach decently, but they probably won't. I probably shouldn't have spawned in the crossbones when we're nose up. Okay, I believe we actually switched successfully. No, something just fell off. Yeah, so that is a downside to using these. The sort of thing is that you kind of have to respawn your vehicle after it takes damage sometimes. And, well, the crossbones is actually not the kind of thing we can watch this for a second. But we have issues with the fact that it can actually hit us. As we can with anything that can actually hit us. It's not like we can't hurt the crossbones. We can do a great job of hurting the crossbones. 2%, 2 whole percent right there. Although we'd be better off with impact in terms of actually trying to do high percent damage, we can't just punch straight through with every shot. I thought we were about to die there. As soon as one of these crams hits us, I think we just die. We're actually okay up until a fairly close range, but things are going to go very wrong very fast. Now, if we could approach her a little bit more from the bottom, we might be a bit better off, but this is about to be a serious problem. Okay, let's pretend that we didn't just go AI dead there. We took those to the middle of the back of the craft, which, it's not horribly armored, but it's not fantastically armored either. And the crossbones crams really hurt, yeah. We can't be in melee range with a craft like this. So if we could sneak up on the crossbones from the bottom, well, okay, then things might be a little bit different. But doing that's difficult. You have to be way faster than an enemy, and would require actual work with the breadboard that I didn't do. This breadboard is absolutely dead simple. If we're fighting... Yep, I still need to put a minimum accuracy on these things. Really wouldn't help, because 10 meters is as slow as it goes, and that won't hit the rook. We actually have a lot of issues hitting the rook, because with vertical lenses, we're better at hitting wide things than tall things. But against air vehicles, we don't try to ram them, we stay at range. In this case, maybe not enough range, we are going to get hit, and we're eventually going to lose. Actually, eventually might be very quickly. In this case, with only 1.5 meters of deck armor. We're really kind of more supposed to provide support than anything else at this role, so ideally get targeting information from another vehicle. We do have radar buoys, really not good enough here. You know, we can win, but requires us to hit something good. Regardless, it's the focus here against air vehicles is more to just punch a hole all the way through them, maybe disable them. Let some other vehicle in the fleet actually kill them. But at least not be useless. Because, you know, ramming submarine, ramming ship, usually useless against air vehicles. The good thing here is we do something. It might not be something good, but we do something. Our torpedo defense is probably not up to scratch either. They do something. Just want to ram one more thing for fun, because, you know, not everything is a tough target. Some things we're just highly efficient against killing, or at killing. Also, using these pierce lenses, or this pierce damage from the pack, we can put a hole straight through some very thick ships. I was worried we were going to miss for a second there. But some targets way softer than others. So, you know, maybe around medium. So, this is my first time making a ramming submarine. My first time making one that switches lens types from vertical to melee. Maybe missed the mark in some places. Some stuff that's pretty bad here, like these rudders. Really, rather than having these things, which I think are kind of cool, but maybe not the most practical thing, it should really use 2 of these for pitch and roll, and then have some room left over for actual turning thrust, because if this thing remains too stationary, it can't turn. In addition, these things are way too slow. 2.4 seconds, 0 to 45 degree turn time. Add on that the fact that they're very vulnerable. Actually, something that would be good to demonstrate before I end this video is, let's bring back the RIA, but she's not going to shoot at us this time. Our damage is going to be entirely self-inflicted. Wonder if we'll see any holes come out the back of the Rhea. It's definitely possible. I do not think that she's thick enough in most places to not just get punched all the way through. It looks like the answer is currently no. Still a fair number of blocks coming off, but maybe not as many as we might like. Looks like we're going to get a stern chase, which is really what we want here. But getting a broadside would be much more likely for us to cut her in half. We need to, yeah, there we go, get a little closer. Since we can't tell with the breadboard how big the enemy vehicle is, I don't actually know when these things should turn on. It's just kind of a guess. Yeah, so we just took damage there. That's really bad. The problem is, enemy vehicles that are this massive will do a lot of damage if they touch us. And there's all these thin beams just hanging off. Unless our front was entirely steam drills or rams, it's almost impossible for us to not take damage somehow. So I try to hold us away with these really long steam drills, but we just take damage sometimes, and there's not that much I can do about it. I should also probably slow down the rate that these move at, because currently they just miss some blocks. It'd be much better if they were good at actually chopping all the way through enemies. So, I mean, we're doing more damage than we're taking, but since we're fighting a much more massive vehicle, and just ramming a more massive vehicle than yourself is incredibly dangerous, we're very quickly losing all of our potential to do damage. 9% of our craft loss, it's really not great. We've lost 3/4 of our damage dealing potential, and we're about to lose the rest. We did kill the Rhea, but we slowly ate away at the whole front of our vehicle. There's really not much I've been able to figure out to deal with this, because we just become way too slow if I make everything rams. There's a few issues. One, at best, rams are 0.3 drag, and they also need left and right clearance, so I can't just paper everything with rams. These are actually pretty tactically placed to try to create as little drag as possible. Some like these create a lot, but they're kind of necessary. Although, in retrospect, I could have a protrusion here and have these pointing forwards, and it would reduce drag a little bit, because they would have top and bottom clearance. So that's a thing that I can do. More ideally, the entire front would just be covered in stuff like this, or this. And maybe that's the thing that I can try, is, you know, basically just cover everything with this. It'd be a lot of drag. Might be too slow, but especially because the head doesn't really cover that much. Definitely be a little bit better, and this doesn't require any sort of clearance, so you can just kind of, you know, do this. Even if they're not attached to anything, so they don't spin, they at least provide you with a lot of defense. There's definitely something to be had here, definitely more experimenting to do. This is just sort of my first take on it. Tried to do some aesthetic concerns, although, you know, she doesn't look fantastic, and still needs a little bit of paint in some spots. But she looks okay. I'll be putting her on the workshop. Maybe try to do some work later with a smaller and hopefully more effective melee craft. Maybe along the same lines, just using one group of 2 particle melee lenses and 1 vertical lens. But anyway, that's all I have to show for today for this vehicle. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope to see you in the future.